Thank you very much. I've got some questions for Gweo, if I may. If Air Marshal Phillips could join us. Assume he's the right person. Welcome, Air Marshal. Thank you for joining us. Air Marshal, the DSR was very clear on the need for guided weapons, explosive ordnance, wasn't it?
Senator, Air Marshal Leon Phillips, Chief of Guided Weapons and Explosive Ordnance, yes.
And can you tell the people listening in at home why that is?
Yes, certainly, Senator. The Defence Strategic Review certainly highlighted that some of our strategic warning time has shortened. It also suggested that we needed to uplift our guided weapons in a number of areas. It suggested long-range fires and long-range strike. It also talked about increasing war stocks, and then it also talked about accelerating and asked us to accelerate domestic manufacturing.
And those last 2 points are related, aren't they? Yes, you can buy war stocks from overseas countries, but having sovereign manufacturing capability allows you to resupply. So, for example, we were at war and ships were being interdicted, we would have a lack of supply, as Ukraine is finding. Not so much from the seaborne munitions, but certainly their stock's limited. So building a sovereign manufacturing capability is an important thing to do if you're going to rely on long-range strike and fire.
Yes, certainly a combination of supply, war stock, and then as well as increased sovereignty to manufacture your own. All of those things collectively would uplift our guided weapons capability.
Thank you. Can you update us on how we're progressing towards sovereign manufacturing?
I certainly can. I mean, we've had a lot of success since the DSR was unveiled, but I think where you want to go is some of the high points. I think in considering sovereign manufacturing, we really have to make sure we balance the right areas. We do have the ability to produce explosive ordnance in this country, but we're not producing more complex guided weapons. So we are taking a crawl, walk, run approach. Some important factors are ultimately we want to get weapons in the hands of the warfighter. Yep. And these are weapons that our ADF are interested in, that will provide operational value. And I think the other important consideration is that it needs to be coupled to the various carriage systems, the various ships, the various aircraft, and the various land vehicles that we use or intend to use. Consequently, and as you can see through the work we've done with the government through AUSMIN, we've focused on a number of areas like our partnerships with the US to look at producing guided multiple launch rocket systems in this country, accessing tech data so that we could produce M795 155 artillery shells that we could interchange with US forces, and as well as uplifting our MRO&U, or maintenance, repair, overhaul and upgrade on some of our naval weapons. And I guess in a signature piece, earlier this year the government announced our contract with Lockheed Martin with the support of the US government in terms of export controls, so we could commence manufacturing GMLRS in 2025.
So you're looking at building the first GMLR in 2025. Will that be manufactured as in from parts, or will it just be assembled here?
So we've said we're taking a crawl, walk, run approach. So we'll initially start with assembly of those items, but in parallel we're also looking and exploring with Australian industry to uplift and qualify them to provide components for those missiles. We're also working on a submission to bring back to government in Q2 24, as the DSR asked, and that's for further options to continue to uplift domestic manufacturing.
And that's going to be important, isn't it, that sovereign manufacturing, as we said earlier. Instead of a crawl, walk, run methodology, is Gweo capable of walking and crawling at the same time?
What I will say is that constructing, designing, manufacturing and certifying complex weapons takes a long time. I think the Norwegian experience around looking at National Strike Missile was about a 20-year journey for them. So it's not something that we're easily going to get to in the next few years if we don't rely on some of our partnerships with OEMs, as well as other countries, to support us in that endeavour to, in a measured sense and a pragmatic and practical sense, uplift our industry in this country to do more in the guided weapons space, Senator.
But if Australian sovereign manufacturers could acquire the IP of such weapons, they would be able to then build them for the Defence Force, wouldn't they? We have the capability here to do it.
We have some capability to do it. I think acquiring the IP is one thing. I think there's a level of infrastructure. I think there's an ability to certify that to international standards that we would recognise, because importantly we need to make sure that when we're handling explosive ordnance and energetics, it needs to be safe for our warfighters, but obviously not so safe when it gets to the other end. So these are important considerations for us. And as well as the skills, support and test equipment, it's a complex activity. We've talked about construction of naval shipbuilding here already. Really complex missiles, often end up, they're not dissimilar to an aircraft, but without landing gear.
Are you aware of any opportunities for Australian manufacturers to build rockets and missiles here?
So we are in discussions with a number of SMEs. We're also in close discussions with our strategic and enterprise partners to explore options for how we might uplift and do more in this country. Certainly working closely with our strategic partners, Lockheed Martin and Raytheon as examples, also working with Kongsberg to see what options there are. We are asking through them that they also, with their knowledge and their understanding of certifying these weapons, how they might support the qualification of Australian industry to input their components, not dissimilar to, say, how we've worked with Lockheed Martin on F-35 as an example.
And that's a good example, F-35, where Australian companies make certain parts of the platform as opposed to a whole one. So with rockets and missiles, one of the key components is the rocket motor. We don't have much native capability of building rocket motors here. Wouldn't the ability to be able to build more rocket motors be an important consideration to have here in country?
So we've certainly done some work internally to look at where it makes sense. It is fair to say that one of the key technologies you would want to get into is solid rocket motors as a step towards having a more wholesome ability to produce weapons in this country. I think importantly, things like warheads and solid rocket motors and the energetics, they have certain challenges, and in terms of moving them internationally, you can't really just FedEx them on a commercial aircraft.
Oh, really?
So well, that's not the plan. But I'll let you know when one's going, Senator.
Thank you. So
that is an important consideration. There is an investment in that. We do have a good base with energetics production through our government-owned facilities at Mulwala and Benalla. But we'll be looking to see what makes the best sense and gives us the best economies of scale and scope at the best price, and that's something we are working on at the moment. and we'll look to see if that makes sense to bring that to government for their consideration.
Excellent, and I look forward to hearing more about that a recommendation and any government response at the time. But I think if you look hard enough, there is some very good Australian companies that will help you accelerate towards having sovereign missile manufacturing capability right here in Australia. Thank you. Okay.